Please don't boil your dog. What's good, y'all? Soul here, and welcome back to the story mode. So it's been about 2 weeks now since our official reveal for the Nintendo Switch 2, as well as our first glimpse of the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Pokemon Legends ZA. It's no mystery that I've been a little on the quiet side because there have been really no real updates since, and, you know, a couple of live things here and there. I just had to get a couple of things out the way, but regardless, it's been a little on the silent side. However, there is one thing that I did neglect to mention, and that is the fact that they are giving us, finally, after 8 years of begging, GameCube games on NSO. Even to the common person, they would probably know and tell you that that's kind of a big deal considering the fact that GameCube games, for the most part, have been pretty inaccessible for quite some time now if you don't still own yours. Backwards compatibility for GameCube games stopped with the Wii, and that was pretty much it. Unless you like soft modded your Wii U back in the day, but I was 14, I wasn't doing all that. Regardless though, with the announcement of GameCube games finally coming to NSO, we got a good handful of games to look forward to on the first day of release of the Switch 2. Of course, you've got some of your classics like Super Mario Sunshine, Luigi's Mansion, and Super Mario Strikers, even Chibi Robo, Wind Waker, which I think is a very odd choice considering the fact that we have a full remaster that's been stuck on the previous console, but whatever. And then of course, the two reasons that I'm making this video at all, which is Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. People have been on their knees, slamming fists to ground, begging for these games to come back in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Both of these games are extremely important to a lot of different people, myself included. Now, if I'm being honest, I didn't play them on the GameCube, I actually played them on the Wii, so I was a little late to it. However, better late than never, and I'm glad that I had the chance to experience them at all, because these are some solid games. However, another moment of honesty, it's been a very long time since I have played either of these titles. Which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing by any means. In fact, it's going to be a lot more fun to play through these games again because I don't remember everything. However, I do have very specific memories that could be right or wrong that I feel make the return of these games pretty important to the future of Pokemon in general. After all, despite technically being spin-offs, these were the closest we had to home console true Pokemon games until Switch. These guys walked so that modern Pokemon could continue to walk, because they for sure ain't running. All that aside, why don't we go ahead and get into the main topics here. Why don't you go ahead, get cozy, grab yourself a squirt, and I recommend a fine dinner of teriyaki chicken, sauced up, clean as hell, with a side of mustard to dip that in, while we talk about why the return of Pokemon Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness is so damn important. The first major thing that makes these games so important is that even though they do technically play a lot like traditional Pokemon, they do a lot of things that break away from traditional Pokemon as well, that make them stand out just a little bit more. Now again, my memory is hazy and I decided to specifically make this video without deep diving into everything just so that when I do play through these games again, it's kind of a fresher experience. But if memory serves me correctly, pretty much every battle in both of these games were double battles. Now, of course, obviously, at this point in time, double battles are nothing new. However, at the time that they were developing this game, Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, which just introduced the concept, had just come out. So obviously, they needed to utilize that for an entire game. And lo and behold, Pokemon Colosseum happened. When Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire first came out, double battles weren't like popping off every other minute, we were getting them every so often throughout our playthroughs. They were very random situations that we would get thrown into that would force us to change up our strategies in how we would battle, which was obviously a very critical aspect in Pokemon Colosseum and much later Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness. Since the entire game played out like that, you were consistently taking care of two Pokemon on the field at one time. Very different mindset coming hot off the heels of Gen 3. Now here's my thing, you could say that I'm overthinking it a little bit, and that would be a very fine take to have, but the reason that I think this way was because I remember these games being kind kind of difficult. And there was a couple of reasons for this. The first reason being, the way that you would get Pokemon was not normal. For whatever reason, the Ore region or wherever these games take place were completely like devoid of Pokemon. Like they were around, sure, but you weren't going into grass and running into Pokemon and catching them normally. This game's gimmick was the introduction to Shadow Pokemon. What a lot of people who got into Pokemon through Pokemon Go probably don't realize is that Shadow Pokemon did not originate from there. It came through a long time ago as a primary mechanic in both of these games. So not only could you not like train up in the grass and just catch Pokemon willy-nilly, no, there were specific times where when you saw a Shadow Pokemon, you needed to go out of your way to catch it no matter what, because you never knew when your next Shadow Pokemon was gonna show up. And the crazy thing is, it goes against everything that we've learned from traditional Pokemon, because these Shadow Pokemon primarily showed up on enemy trainer teams. So this was the one time in the franchise where they legally made it so that you actually had to go out of your way to capture the trainer's Pokemon. They weren't blocking the ball, you had a device to override that. And that was so cool. On top of that though, another added challenge was the fact that we had to purify these Pokemon by utilizing them in battle as Shadow Pokemon. And the thing about that is that they didn't have their traditional moves when they were Shadow Pokemon. And then when you purify them, you kind of had to rebuild them from scratch, get their proper moves in order, then you could have a proper teammate with you. You see what I'm saying here? This little mechanic added an entirely new sense of challenge in which you didn't just catch a Pokemon, have an idea of what its moveset was, and just build it up from there. It was a little bit more of a process, which again, you could only do in trainer battles because wild battles were barely a thing. So with that in mind, you had to be really careful about who you were choosing to be on your final team. Had to be just a little bit more conscious of things like type coverage and level up movesets and things along those lines. Especially so you could properly prep for and get through those like super long gauntlet of trainers that takes forever to get through. I don't know who cooked up that concept, but by golly, bring that sucker back because we need some more challenge of this caliber. Something of a like survival game, you know? Running up those challenges and those gauntlets were a true test of willpower because it was back-to-back non-stop battles. And if you didn't have your proper items and a proper team with proper type coverage, you could get mollywopped pretty damn bad if you're not careful. I think it's safe to acknowledge that we don't have anything near this level of challenge in modern Pokemon, right? So all in all, in terms of gameplay, I just really appreciate the like shift in gears that they made us go through. The actual attempt of giving us something of a challenge that we would remember for time to come. But again though, maybe it wasn't all that much of a challenge or that much of a shift. I was just a lot younger when I first played these games, so my knowledge of Pokemon is not nearly as decent as it is now. I just really like that they had the freedom to go out of their way to completely like change formulas that we were so used to at the time to make an entirely new experience for a Pokemon game. But that's just it. It doesn't stop there. Another thing that I very much appreciate about these games is the freedom that they had when it came to storytelling. Playing through Pokemon Colosseum for the first time was such whiplash, because what in the hell do you mean that I was a criminal that worked for an enemy organization that turned traitor? Nothing in modern Pokemon, anime and video game alike, has touched something this crazy. And in retrospect, it's not even that crazy in the grand scheme of video games. It's just crazy in terms of grand scheme for Pokemon stories, because they never do stuff like that. It was just such a foreign and unique start to a game that I couldn't help but hang on to it forever. Like, they just never did something like this ever again. And that is one of the most frustrating things I have ever seen in a franchise. I mean, come on now. You guys have heard me for years talk about the concepts of possibly joining the enemy team, betraying the enemy team. Maybe your rival is part of the enemy team, or maybe joins them as they get more and more evil or corrupt throughout the story. And it's just so frustrating because this is like the closest we'll probably ever get to something like that, because the game's got to stay super PG for whatever reason, and we can't have super unique stories about trainers that come from darker backgrounds per se. I mean, granted, Pokemon Legends ZA could be very different from anything we've known before, but I highly doubt it's gonna go anywhere near the route of Pokemon Colosseum. But regardless, I not only appreciate that super unique opening to a story, but the fact that we had an entire partner with us for the entirety of our playthrough. Rui was super critical to the game because she was the one that had psychic abilities that was able to pinpoint shadow Pokemon for you. Now, I can't speak much in terms of character development because, again, I don't remember like how that story ended per se. It's been a very long time again. However, I really appreciate that we had a partner with us throughout the entirety of our playthrough that wasn't just our Pokemon. It made things feel a little bit less lonely, especially because the Ore region was kind of treated as something of like a giant wasteland. You know? So there was comfort in knowing that somebody was with you through the entirety of this journey, experiencing all of this with you. A character that had their own personality, that contributed to dialogue and things like that. It was such a different take, and I'm so sad that, again, most other Pokemon games since then has not really done that. Not even the sequel in XD Gale of Darkness did it like that. I think there were moments where the sister was with you, right? But again, it didn't do it like its predecessor. Rui got replaced by a machine, bro. Why is that so accurate to today? What's going on, bro? One of the reasons that I appreciate that final snippet in Area Zero from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is because it felt so like real to actually have your friends alongside you for like an actual big piece of the story within that game. So having an entire character with you throughout the entirety of a game, like it's Legend of Zelda, and you've got like Navi by your side, is a very tough concept that I would love for them to revisit in a future title someday. Like, yeah, sure, in modern titles, your rivals or your friends or whatever are constantly showing up to bug you every 5 minutes, but it is definitely not the same. Long and short of it is, I've missed these games, and every time I see them in passing on YouTube or whatever, it kind of brings me back to better days when things were much simpler, when I could just sit down, play my Wii, and play a game that was backwards compatible without the added interference of needing to pay for a subscription service. Regardless, I already pay for the service, so I'm going to be playing these games regardless because they're there and I'm already going to have access to them, so why the hell not? And I'm really looking forward to it because I haven't seen them in way too long. It is absurd how long it took us to get these games back. And of course, with these games returning, I don't think that it's completely unreasonable and unbelievable to believe that other games could be on the table for a potential return on NSO. Closed mouths don't get fed, so I'm going to speak it into the heavens until it becomes real. I know Wii games are not a thing that's available yet, but my god, I would kill somebody for the Pokepark franchise to at least be available on NSO if we're not getting a third one. And if Pokemon Colosseum and Gale of Darkness can come back, then maybe it's kind of reasonable to believe that other Pokemon spin-off games could still be on the table, especially because we're working with much stronger hardware. I mean, not that the Switch 1 wasn't capable of running any of the games that we're talking about now, but you know what? As long as we get them eventually, better late than never. And Colosseum and XD Gale of Darkness are a very solid start. And I think that we need to let them know that these games coming back is very important to us because not only do we want other older games to come back from other consoles that are locked behind like the DS and things like that, stuff that we don't have access to anymore because they're not manufacturing them anymore, I want them to be able to look at these games, look at how we're enjoying them, and maybe feel free to borrow some ideas from some of these older games. Maybe the next mainline Pokemon game could be a little more on the challenging side, giving us major gauntlets to go through that will really test our knowledge and skill as trainers. Having a playable character that might actually have a little bit more of an interesting history that could play into the main plot. Having a storyline that isn't simply just becoming a champion. Maybe it could be something else entirely. I mean, granted, the Legends games are clearly more than free to do some stuff like this, so maybe we'll see some of these ideas touched up upon in the near future, but who knows? I just want the big dogs up at Pokemon Company and Game Freak to know and acknowledge that we enjoy these games for what they are because they were such a unique take and spin on the franchise that we love so much, and that we could utilize some of these ideas for the future to really change up what Pokemon could be and maybe reach more of its full potential. But hey, you know what? Maybe that's just me. So that just about does it for this one. Very clearly, there wasn't a lot for me to talk about, so I'm gonna touch upon like the whole like modern Pokemon conversations again. I know a couple of you guys kind of mess with those, and I think those are kind of fun to make. So I've got a couple of those on the way. Just had to go through a couple of like, you know, some day job stuff, had to make a couple of changes, life changes and things, but that's how it goes. But regardless of all that, I'm passing the mic over to you guys, and I want you guys to tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below. Are you excited for the return of Pokemon Colosseum and Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness? Are these games that you've played and found fun and are fond of from your childhood? You enjoyed your time with them, you played them on GameCube, maybe you were like me and you played them later when you got your Wii and you played them through backwards compatibility and you enjoyed your time with them. Or are you on the opposing side? You have absolutely no attachment to these games, maybe you've never played them before, maybe you're going to play them for the first time, or maybe you're going to skip them because they don't really look all that appealing to you. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I'm always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm gonna go ahead and do just that. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
I stay funky, doing donuts in a bin. I stay funky, battle goes wherever I am. I stay funky, I don't know who's ready to spit. Just know you're going down with my 58 clips. I stay funky, honey's taking back to the crib. I stay funky, get the club popped off like pins.